ruins.
Hello everyone, and welcome to my video for Resident Evil Village. This is the first time I talk about my theories and analysis in this kind of format, so apologies if I don't have the best editing or recording quality, but I wanted to give it a try and I hope you'll watch it even for a little bit. Before we begin, I would like to start by saying that I don't know much about the Resident Evil series because it's not a kind of genre that I'm a fan of, and I always consider it too scary for me. Thus, I don't know the lore very well, but I have learned some things by watching gameplays of the recent RE2 and RE3 remakes, and learning some things from the wiki page. Thus, my knowledge is limited, so apologies, and I hope you can correct me if I said something wrong, because I do look forward to your comments to hear what you have to say in regards to the things that I'm gonna talk about. The subject of this video will cover what I think we might see in the game, specifically what kind of enemies we might encounter, something which I thought about because of the location where the story apparently will take place, which, according to the screenshot from the developer message video that showed the inventory, I was surprised to see that 100 lei is written there because lei is my country's currency, which looks like this by the way, and lei, or leu for singular, translates as lion. And it was indeed quite a surprise because ever since I saw the trailer when it was revealed, there were a couple of things I took notice of, and I was like, what if this will take place in Romania, specifically in Transylvania? And then I was like, nah, no way, but lo and behold. With the evidence from that video, I gave some thought later on and I came up with some theories about what things could be presented in the game based on my country's folklore, so I made some light research and gathered some facts to present in this video, which will be about the supernatural creatures I think could be the inspiration for the monsters you might get to see, and I'm looking forward to hear if you knew about some things already, or if it was the first time hearing about them, because I know many of you have remarked the appearance of what appears to be vampires or witches, and these beastmen, which I think I've seen people saying that they might be werewolves, and I guess many of you know that Romania is known for vampires, most likely because of Dracula's story, and in this video I want to talk about the mythological creatures which, although not exclusive to just Romania, with similarities found mostly throughout Eastern Europe, I will talk about how they are described in our folklore, these creatures that have served as source of inspiration for what many know about the vampire myth.
What is it with that creepy story?
It's just a local tale.
You're really into that stuff?
So, let me tell you some local tales that might provide context for what we might possibly see in Resident Evil Village. In Romania, we call Strigoi, and in the case of females, Strigoice, creatures in folklore which are evil spirits, and they are the ones possessing the many attributes found in vampires, and in other cases, how I observed in English sources, Strigoi can be translated as either ghouls, poltergeists, or even zombies, being the general term we mostly use for all of those things. If the word might sound slightly familiar with another one, with the word Striga perhaps, and most likely you heard this one in the Witcher series, that's because these supernatural beings can also be found in other cultures such as Poland or Albania, and apparently in other myths from Slavic folklore. The name is derived from the Greek word strix, meaning owl, or more specifically screech owl, and legends describe it as a nocturnal bird of ill omen that fed on human flesh and blood and were known for their frightening screech in the night, hence their name. Strigoi is derived from the Latin striga, and here in Romania we have as the common name of the barn owl as striga because of their screech, and the verb a striga means to scream or screech if you like, and this is how the word strigoi came to be, since this attribute is associated with them. From other sources, the word striga came to be used to describe women who practiced sorcery and could transform into these birds at night. If you search the word striga, besides the meaning of evil spirit, it can also mean witch, what many presume that these ladies we see in the castle are supposed to be, and possibly this old woman as well. Witches or crones being prominent figures in our fairy tales, the most well-known character being Muma Pădurii, which translates as the Mother of the Forest, a malevolent witch who's similar to Baba Yaga from Slavic folklore, and she could possibly be the village elder and maybe even a cult leader, much like Sadler from Resident Evil 4, and these ladies could be part of it. Going back to Strigoi, they are known to cause misery to people, taking away their life force, though not always through blood-sucking according to some accounts. They also take the milk from cattle, bring diseases, death among people and livestock, cause hail to destroy crops, or they can hold back rain to cause droughts. I really think that the enemies in Village could be referred to as Strigoi, much like how in Resident Evil 4 we had the Ganados and the Magini in Resident Evil 5. The translation for the latter, from what I read, means wicked people or to refer to evil spirits, just like how Strigoi are described. Now, they can either be born and are distinguished by several traits, such as being born with the vestigial tail or with the cap, as many texts like to refer to it, which actually is referring to the placenta, and it's said that if it's swallowed by the baby, they'll become Strigoi. Thus, midwives had to quickly remove and burn it to save the child from becoming one. This is related to the fact that Strigoi are described to have a bald spot on top of their head, and when a pregnant woman would go out at night without having her head covered, and the devil could have been lurking around, the devil would place its cap onto her, which I guess is supposed to be considered a curse, which actually is made upon the child, and that's why at birth the baby's cap has to be removed quickly. Next, I'm gonna talk about the two types of Strigoi, the dead and the living ones. So I'm going to give a quick overview of these two types as they're described in folklore, just so you can take note of some aspects. So, one can become a Strigoi after death if they met certain conditions during their lifetime, such as the following. If the deceased performed a lot of evil deeds and were very wicked during their lifetime. If they met an untimely death, such as dying from getting caught in an accident, being shot, or drowned. And another way to become one is if a proper funeral was not performed. Thus, their souls could not cross over. Also, apparently, one who has become Strigoi after death, they won't show signs of decay. The soul of the Strigoi will come out of its grave at midnight to torment their family members, or the ones who wronged them, to drain their vitality, and will go back to its grave at dawn, being driven away by the crowing of roosters. In order to kill the Strigoi so it won't return, the body is dug up, and there are several ways to prevent them from coming back, the most effective among them being the well-known stabbing method with a wooden stake in the heart, which some sources say that had to be made from either ash wood or rosewood, or using an iron one that was heated until it glowed red. Though not always, just a regular sharp iron object will do. To ensure for good that it will not be coming back, it would have its heart removed and burned until it turned into ash, or sometimes the whole body would be burned and scattered in a field or running waters. Okay, so finally about the living Strigoi, they are the ones, like I mentioned earlier, who are that way from birth and will be recognized by certain features. Some accounts describe them to have a large mouth, feet like hooves, hairy hands, and even a tail, and they also won't eat garlic or onion and won't stand the smell of frankincense. Moving on, with the mentioning of werewolves, I've seen in several Resident Evil games mutated dogs and other enemies resulted from splicing animal DNA with humans, and I think that even though we weren't shown in the trailer, because I wouldn't say this looks like a werewolf, we might get to see werewolves based on what I'll be talking about next. Sometimes used interchangeably by people from different regions of the country, another word for Strigoi is Pricoloci, but this term is used more to describe wolf men. They are described to either have the head of a wolf and body of a man, or vice versa, and unlike the werewolves, which are typically known for transforming on a full moon, Pricoloci are not affected by this. According to stories, some persons are unaware that at night they turn into a wolf who goes around causing evil deeds, being a result of a witch's curse, or because it is said that they were sold to the devil from the time they were young, while some are aware and they are in fact witches or warlocks who take shape of animals. When I was thinking about Pricoloci or werewolves, I wondered if there were cases in Resident Evil of infected humans turned monsters that were able to transform back into their human form, which would reflect the attribute of shapeshifting. And from what I saw, this happened in Resident Evil 4 with those having the dominant plagas in them. On the subject of shapeshifting, I had a theory that in this scene, the swarm of what appears to be insects was in fact one of the 3 women who is missing here, who might have been able to transform. But then I realized that they might actually be controlling those insects, similar to what I read about Resident Evil 7 regarding the character Marguerite Baker. If those are indeed insects, it actually aligns with a characteristic which I read about the Strigoi from Albanian mythology, where it says that these vampiric witches traditionally would take the form of a moth, and actually an entry in the Romanian dictionary says that Strigoi, just like how we call the barn owl, the term can also be used for the death head's hawk moth, known for its pattern that resembles a human skull. And both were attributed this term because it relates to the screeching sounds that these creatures make. This kind of moth apparently also being able to produce a squeaking sound. And no way did I try to watch videos about this because I really don't like insects. Another theory that I have, perhaps this scene is some sort of hallucination or a nightmare that the protagonist experiences. Now it's time to talk about this part from the trailer, and from what I've seen, many speculate this thing in the middle of the symbol is supposed to be a fetus, and this symbol can be seen several times, so in the game we might be dealing with a cult, yet again like with the Los Iluminados from Resident Evil 4. Boy, Village seems to be quite similar to RE4, right? I want to mention that in another source, I learned that it's possible that what we see here is not a fetus, so I can recommend you to watch some videos on a channel written below in the description, which covers other aspects told by a fellow Romanian. But while doing my research, I found some things that might indicate something related to babies. Based on some rumors I read, it said that Ethan and Mia Winters might have a child and perhaps the child gets kidnapped. Babies might play a big part in the story, evidenced by those occult symbols, and we also get this scene of a woman holding a baby, and we see it again another time in the trailer up close. Also, it's probably due to the lighting or something, I'm not sure, but if we look closely here, on the baby's head there are 2 dark spots, and I kind of wondered if it might be blood. Like I said, it could be from the lighting, but that baby doesn't have much hair, and those spots there kind of stood out for me. If Ethan and Mia do have a child, then it could be possible that perhaps they could have some malformations because they were infected by the mold in Resident Evil 7. Maybe there's also something about this baby we see in the trailer. This is far-fetched, but it's mostly because I noticed those suspicious spots on his head. And what if the body has other features and we can't see them because the baby is wrapped in the blanket? And this is what I want to talk about next, related to the stuff I said before on how some are born with certain features, and it's said that those features indicate that someone could become Strigoi. We have another word which again depends on regions. It's used to refer to Strigoi, and this word is Moroi. And a lot of times Moroi is used to refer to children. That's why I thought about them, due to the fact that we were shown that symbol that almost everyone says that it resembles a baby. So, just like the Strigoi, I will mention the conditions of how one becomes Moroi and how to pacify them. Moroi are the souls of children who died without being baptized, were stillborn, or those who were murdered, but they don't become Moroi right away. That will happen 7 years after their death. In the 7th year, their souls will scream from the grave, demanding baptism, and if someone hears their cry, they can put their soul at rest by reciting what it said at baptism, and includes the part with "In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, Amen," and the ritual is complete if a piece of cloth is put over the child's grave. This sort of ritual can be done much earlier so that the dead child won't become Moroi and be received in heaven. Sources saying that holy water has to be poured on the grave for 7 years on Epiphany Day. In traditions from other regions, requirements will vary, and if such rituals won't be done, then just like the Strigoi, they will haunt people, especially their mothers who might have willingly killed them and will cause other misfortunes. So yeah, if there's a possibility that babies will play a role in village for sacrificing rituals or things related to mutating them with whatever virus might be used this time, the myth of the Moroi is what made me think about this, and maybe some things inspired from it might be referenced in the game's story. Lastly, there's another thing for which I have a theory for, and it still relates to the supernatural, and that is the time frame which we see in the trailer. We are shown that it's wintertime in the village, and I'm quite looking forward to see if the game will specify a date, because if it will take place in a certain month and day, then it will be connected to all the things I talked about previously, because a certain day might emphasize whatever evil will be unleashed, and here's why. In Romania, on the 13th of November, we celebrate Saint Andrew, who is considered the patron saint of the country. The reason why I'm mentioning this day is because on the night before Saint Andrew, on the 29th of November, there are several customs and superstitions aimed at protecting both people and their homes and animals, many considering this night to be the Romanian's equivalent of Halloween, as this is when supernatural beings walk among the living and is referred to as the Night of Strigoi. And as I mentioned at the start of the video, when I first saw the trailer, there was a detail which was very familiar to me, and it was this scene here where we see a string of garlic at the window, the almighty repellent of the Strigoi, which people will hang at the windows and doors of their houses, as well as the entrances of barns to protect their livestock. This day is sometimes referred as the Night of the Wolves as well, because Saint Andrew is also called the Apostle of the Wolves, and this has something to do with a legend which originates from our ancestors, the Dacian people. Stories say that when Saint Andrew came to spread the teachings of Christianity on the territory of Romania, a long time ago when it was known as Dacia, Andrew took shelter in a cave and was watched over by wolves and guided on his journey by their leader, the Great White Wolf. The legend from the time of Dacia says that there was once a priest who roamed the land, helping people and preaching the word of Zalmoxis, who was the deity of the Dacians. Historical accounts say that people from Dacia were called Daoi, meaning wolf, so there's a connection with wolves since ancient times. Sources say that due to the assimilation of Christian practices, Saint Andrew took the place of the priest from the legend. So now that you heard this story, you have learned that wolves played a great part in the lives of Romania's ancestors, so I wouldn't be surprised to see wolfmen in the game or mutated wolves as well. Well, that's about all I had to say. I was quite intrigued to find out that my country will be a setting in a video game. The only other instance I knew of was in the case of Castlevania, taking place in Wallachia. I only watched the animation, by the way. I'm looking forward to see just what sort of things from my culture will be shown in the game, and if any of my theories will happen in the story. If you want to find out more things, like I mentioned earlier, in the description below there's a link to another channel with videos also made by a fellow Romanian who covers other aspects which I haven't talked about, so check them out if you have the time. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts, either here in the comments section, or you can also write to me on Twitter. Thank you very much for watching the video, and I hope you found some things interesting.